This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, July 20th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. The United States continues to be hit with a barrage of COVID-19 infections. 45 hospitals in the southern U.S. state of Florida reported Monday having no intensive care beds available as the surge in coronavirus cases in the U.S. puts a strain on the healthcare system. The state reported more than 12,000 new cases Sunday, its fifth day in a row of reporting more than 10,000 new infections. Nationwide, the U.S. reported more than 500 deaths and 63,000 new cases Sunday, leading the world in totals for both categories. Europe has more than 3 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 and more than 200,000 deaths. The coronavirus has pushed the European Union into a deep recession, with economists predicting the bloc's economy will shrink 8.3% this year. The World Health Organization over the weekend reported a record rise in COVID-19 infections. David Doyle reports.
The World Health Organization has reported a record rise in global coronavirus cases for a second day in a row, with the total increasing by nearly 260,000 in 24 hours. The most new infections on Saturday were from the United States, Brazil, India and South Africa. Those four countries accounting for nearly two-thirds of new cases, according to WHO figures, with the United States alone reporting over 71,000 infections. India on Friday became only the third country in the world to report more than 1 million cases, while Brazil on Thursday crossed the 2 million mark. Speaking at the 18th Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture on Saturday, UN Chief Antonio Guterres said the pandemic had been likened to an X-ray, revealing fractures in the fragile skeleton of the societies we have built.
It is exposing fallacies and falsehoods everywhere. The lie that free markets can deliver health care for all. The fiction that unpaid care work is not work. The delusion that we live in a post-racist world. The myth that we are all in the same boat. Because while we are all floating on the same sea, it is clear that some are in super yachts, with others are clinging to drifting debris.
Total global coronavirus cases surpassed 14 million on Friday, according to a Reuters tally. Another milestone in the spread of the disease, which has killed nearly 600,000 people in 7 months.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. As coronavirus infections spread across Nigeria, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control is fighting back with aggressive testing. The NCDC says it aims to test millions of people in the coming months. To achieve this, it is expanding its workforce and collaborations with private sector players. Timothy Obiezu reports from Abuja.
An extraction process for COVID-19 samples ongoing at the National Reference Laboratory in Abuja, one of many labs set up across the country to test for the coronavirus. In this room, lead virologist Adama Ahmed and her team of medical laboratory scientists prepare samples before they're transferred into the machines for testing.
We are having 2 shifts now, day shift and night shift, to make sure that testing for COVID-19 is continuous. As they have, embarked into, community screening now, a lot of samples are coming into the laboratories.
Nigeria was among countries in Africa that initially recorded low COVID-19 testing. In May, when President Muhammadu Buhari relaxed the 5-week lockdown, only around 11,000 tests had been carried out. But recent count shows over 185,000 samples have been tested so far, a significant jump from previous figures.
We are using every machinery that we have. We are using the COBAS, we are using the Abbott platform, We are using the GNSPACT in addition to the regular open platform. And we have optimized more labs than when we started. In June alone, we were able to optimize 14 labs.
The Nigeria's Center for Disease Control, NCDC, is also leveraging on inputs and support from private sector to reach more people with testing. A private sector-led coalition against COVID-19, CACOVID, was launched in March to provide funding to accelerate coronavirus tests and treatments. Non-profit groups such as Flying Doctors are also helping provide mobile testing facilities for COVID-19.
It reduces the need to continually change PPE because obviously they don't have that direct patient exposure. And we've noticed, because they're not so worried when they're testing and so sort of conscious, that actually also improves the speed of testing.
But despite daily records of new coronavirus cases, there is still widespread disbelief.
For me, I'm not trust the coronavirus day for Nigeria. Because of some country, coronavirus day, I'm about this Nigeria, no coronavirus. Some people were the leader, the Nigeria people, they take the thing like business.
Nigerian authorities are targeting 8 million tests within 1 year, but say global scarcity of test kits and a widespread disbelief in Nigeria could stand in the way of achieving this goal. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja.
A member of the movement in Mali says the group is grateful to the economic community of West African states for the regional group's efforts to resolve the country's political crisis and for condemning the killing of peaceful protesters. However, Ramata Cisse, president of the Change in Mali movement, says the protesters do not support ECOWAS' long-held tradition of not wanting to support the removal of democratically elected leaders. An ECOWAS delegation was in Bamako over the weekend for another effort aimed at resolving the political stalemate. There were reports that the protesters had proposed a dissolution of parliament and the formation of a transitional government. But Cisse says the implementation of any proposal hinges first on President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita's resignation. The former wife of former Liberian President Charles Taylor, Agnes Reeves-Taylor, returned to Liberia over the weekend from London. Reeves-Taylor was charged with crimes committed during the Liberian Civil War, but she's denying those charges, and they were later dismissed. Former President Taylor's National Patriotic Party and family members say they're planning a program to officially welcome Reeves-Taylor home. She returns at a time when the NPP is said to be in turmoil. Some party members are already reportedly referring to her as the mother of the party. However, Cyril Allen, chair emeritus of the NPP, says Reeves-Taylor's return to Liberia to take care of family business and not to enter into politics. Longtime U.S. Congressman John Lewis, a champion of civil rights for African Americans, has died. Lewis was 80 years old. He died after a year-long battle with pancreatic cancer. VOA's Chris Simpkins has more on the life of an extraordinary man.
We cannot give up now. We cannot give in.
A leader of the modern-day American civil rights movement, John Lewis worked closely with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and was the last surviving keynote speaker from the 1963 March on Washington.
We shall splinter the segregated South into 1,000 pieces and put them together in the image of God and democracy. We must say, wake up, America, wake up!
Lewis gained national recognition 2 years later when he, along with other voting rights demonstrators, were beaten by police in Selma, Alabama. The 1965 incident, known as Bloody Sunday, triggered a national awakening to end racial discrimination.
We were beaten, we were tear gassed. I thought I was going to down this bridge.
Months after the violence, Lewis stood next to President Lyndon Johnson when the landmark 1965 Voting Rights Act was signed into law. It was a crowning moment for Lewis as the legislation outlawed discriminatory voting practices that kept African Americans from gaining political power.
The Act of 1965 freed and liberated so many people.
In 1986, Lewis began his own political career after being elected to the U.S. House of Representatives from Georgia. Called the conscience of the Congress, Lewis fought for income inequality for minorities, criminal justice reform, and gun safety.
We cannot continue to stick our heads in the sand and ignore the reality of mass gun violence in our nation.
In 2011, President Barack Obama awarded Lewis the Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. Right before New Year's Day 2020, the veteran congressman announced he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. While under cancer treatment, he returned to his native Alabama to commemorate the 55th anniversary of the Bloody Sunday March, refusing to let his grave condition hold him back.
I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give in. I'm going to continue to fight. We need your prayers now more than ever before. Let's do it. We can do it. Selma is a different place.
Chris Simpkins, VOA News, Washington.
But we can make it much better.
Coronavirus infections and deaths continue to mount in the United States, prompting officials to take actions they once resisted. Marcus Harton has the details.
Police in Miami Beach, Florida, enforced a new curfew Saturday night.
We're hoping that by closing earlier, it actually tones down the party and will allow these folks to go home, go back to their hotels, wherever they're staying, and possibly keep everyone else around them, everyone else in our city, safe.
Representative Donna Shalala, who represents Miami Beach in Congress, is calling for even tougher action to stop the spread.
And it's totally out of control. We need to close down in Florida. We've asked the governor to do that, and we've even asked him to do the simplest thing, and that is to require masks for everyone. He has not done that.
Climbing case numbers have forced other governors who once resisted mask mandates to put them in place.
We did take the further step of instituting a statewide mask mandate. Not something I wanted to do, but it's something everybody can do to relieve the pressure on our hospitals, to give us a hope to bring down those cases.
President Donald Trump says he's not ordering mask wearing nationwide. In an exclusive interview on Fox News Sunday, he cited contradictory advice on masks issued during the early days of the pandemic.
Everybody was saying don't wear a mask. All of a sudden, everybody's got to wear a mask. And as you know, masks cause problems too. With that being said, I'm a believer in masks. I think masks are good. But I leave it up to the governors.
To deal with the economic consequences of the virus, Congress is expected this week to work on another coronavirus stimulus package. Lawmakers are under pressure to act quickly because their August recess is approaching. Marcus Harton, VOA News, Washington.
The White House is insisting that schools must open this fall, but school districts across the U.S. are wrestling with how to do so safely. VOA Steve Baragona has our report.
In Los Angeles, California, Catholic schools are preparing to welcome students back this fall. Luis Hayes is principal of St. Joseph's School.
Right now, the plan is to return back to in-school instruction, but with mitigation. Desks will be 6 feet apart. We'll have partitions, masks, temperature screenings.
President Donald Trump threatened to cut funding to U.S. schools that do not open. But with coronavirus infections rising in L.A. County, Superintendent Austin Butner says public schools will be online only.
While the new school year will begin in August, it will not start with students at school facilities. The health and safety of all in the school community is not something we can compromise.
It's a tough decision. Health and education experts say kids are better off at school. At-home learning is not working as well for many students. Both classwork and social skills are suffering. And many kids are missing out on more than education, notes U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Chief Robert Redfield.
Whether it's the absence of mental health services for the 7.1 million kids who get their mental health service in school, whether it's the nutritional services that some of the kids get, whether it's the fact that this is where most of our mandatory reporting for sexual abuse and child abuse is.
Have a good day. Children's risk of infection, severe illness, and death from COVID-19 are much lower than adults, but not zero. And teachers and staff are at risk. Teachers want to go back to school, but not if it's unsafe, says National Education Association President Lily Eskelsen Garcia.
And I want Donald Trump to sit in the back of my class of 39 and breathe their air. I want him to sit there for 7 hours, 5 days a week, and have those kids cough and sneeze on him.
Schools in Germany, South Korea, and many other countries have reopened with new measures to prevent infections. Barriers, masks, and temperature checks, more space between students, more cleaning and hand hygiene. Schools have not become virus hotspots in these countries, but they had the epidemic under control before they opened, unlike much of the United States, says Jennifer Nuzzo at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security.
In communities where the case numbers are rapidly increasing, it may not be possible to safely reopen schools until disease transmission is lowered. Can't stress that enough.
And the start of the school year is just weeks away, leaving little time to contain the outbreak and prepare classrooms. Steve Baragona, VOA News.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, NASA plans to launch its newest Mars rover by the end of the month. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Linor Moudou, your VOA Health correspondent. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Health Organization says there are currently no drugs licensed for the treatment or prevention of COVID-19, and there is no proof that hydroxychloroquine or any other drug can cure or prevent coronavirus. The misuse of hydroxychloroquine can cause serious side effects, illness, and even lead to death. For more information on COVID-19, visit who.int or contact your local or national health authorities.
With the coronavirus pandemic hampering rally plans, the campaign of U.S. President Donald Trump is going on the offensive with massive ad spending and using White House events as opportunities to deliver his re-election bid message. Meanwhile, his presumptive Democratic opponent, Joe Biden, is sticking to a less is more approach. White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara examines the different strategies between the campaigns.
The radical left-wing mob's agenda: take over our cities, defund the police, pressure more towns to follow, and Joe Biden stands with them.
President Donald Trump's campaign ads show a candidate on the offensive, with a negative message attacking his opponent.
Innocent children fatally shot.
With campaign rallies postponed due to the pandemic, Trump is relying on ads and presidential events to press his opponent, Democratic presumptive nominee Joe Biden, who is ahead in most public opinion polling. In Tuesday's China policy announcement at the White House,
Biden sides with China over America time and time again.
And at Wednesday's infrastructure event in Atlanta.
Biden is happy to tie up projects and red tape, and we want to get things built.
Like Trump, past incumbents have employed what's known as the Rose Garden strategy, using presidential events at the White House to highlight achievements in an election year.
But if you use an event like that, or you use a press conference that's supposed to be about an official announcement about Hong Kong, and instead take 90% of the time to attack your political opponent, that's not the way things have been done in the past by previous presidents.
Well, I couldn't come to Spain without coming by the old house.
Meanwhile, Biden is taking a less is more approach, limiting campaign travel and news conferences.
Limiting Biden's exposure, but also allowing Trump to have the main news coverage has actually been very effective, because Trump has not been on message and has frequently stumbled into errors and into saying things that can be used very effectively against him.
The latest Quinnipiac University poll shows Biden with a wide lead of 52% to Trump's 37%. Other polling has the race closer.
The duty to care.
This despite the Biden campaign spending much less on ads than Trump.
I promise you this: I won't traffic in fear and division. I won't fan the flames of hate.
The ads have largely emphasized the need to bring the country together in times of crisis.
I will not abandon you. We're all in this together. We'll fight this together.
Implying that Trump is failing to do so.
Stronger than we were before we began.
Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
As in the past several U.S. presidential election cycles, the outcome of the 2020 contest between Republican President Donald Trump and presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden depends on how a handful of states vote. VOA Steve Reddish explains the geography of America's Electoral College.
From afar, a U.S. presidential election probably looks like a nationwide referendum on a couple of candidates. But actually, it is an aggregation of elections held in each of the 50 states. The more populous the state, the more votes it has in what is called the Electoral College. 7 states have the fewest number of electoral votes, 3. 1 for the state's member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and 2 for the state's U.S. senators. The District of Columbia gets the minimum 3 as well. California, Texas, New York, and Florida have the most electoral votes. The popular vote winner in each state typically gets all of the state's electoral votes. The objective: win enough states to reach 270 electoral votes, a simple majority of the 538 electoral votes available. In 2016, Democrat Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by about 3 million votes. But Republican Donald Trump won the Electoral College by more than 70 electoral votes, flipping 6 states that voted Democrat in 2012, winning Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania by fewer than 80,000 votes. That's where the 2020 political battleground starts.
Florida, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan are all states that have been pretty competitive in recent years. They're all states that voted for Barack Obama twice. North Carolina only voted for Obama once in 2008, and Arizona hasn't voted Democratic for president since the 90s. But what you're seeing in states like Arizona and North Carolina is this kind of revolt against Trump amongst white college-educated suburbanites is helping to make those states more competitive. And so those are kind of the 6 states that most people feel like are going to decide the election.
Kyle Kondik is managing editor for Sabato's Crystal Ball at the University of Virginia's Center for Politics. He is skeptical of polls suggesting a possible landslide victory for Democrat Joe Biden.
We've had very close and competitive presidential elections in the United States this century, except arguably for Barack Obama's 7-point national victory in 2008. But the other 4 elections were pretty close. And so this is why I'm sort of skeptical that these polls showing Biden with this kind of bloated national lead are ultimately going to reflect reality come election day. Like, I do think Biden could end up winning decisively, but I struggle with a double-digit margin just because that's something we haven't seen in a while.
Election day is months away, giving President Trump plenty of time to boost his poll numbers.
If he claws back some of his support, if he cuts into Biden's lead, we know in 2016 he was able to win the election without winning the national popular vote. So if the national polls are, a Biden lead of, say 3 to 5 points or something on election day, I think there's probably going to be some genuine drama as to who's going to win.
Steve Reddish, VOA News, Washington.
NASA plans to launch its newest Mars rover by the end of the month after hardware issues scrapped an earlier launch. The space agency has until the middle of August to complete a successful launch before planetary alignment issues force a costly delay to the mission. Here's VOA's Arash Arabasadi.
Recently at Florida's Cape Canaveral, scientists and the mission crew tucked NASA's Perseverance rover inside the nose of the Mars 2020 spacecraft for a rescheduled launch. Project scientist Kenneth Farley.
There have been a number of technical issues getting the rocket together. Spacecraft is all ready to go, and as recently as a couple of days ago, the spacecraft was bolted on top of the rocket.
Scientists are now conducting final tests on the craft and its booster.
One of the hard things about launching rockets is you have to get everything packaged just right into the spacecraft. So the delay is not because of anything with the rover, but it's just a matter of packaging the rover within that rocket and making sure then that rocket is ready for launch.
NASA's Bethany Ehlman says the agency remains upbeat about the mission's 2-week window after issues with the rocket scrapped the original launch.
Typically what happens is the launch goes the first day if all conditions on the vehicle are green and the weather is good. The window is to allow for bad weather, for other things to happen, for contingency. So we're pretty optimistic that we're going to get off the ground.
But if it's not launched by mid-August, the mission will have to wait until Earth and Mars return to proper alignment in 2022. The delay alone could cost about $500 million. The U.S., China, and UAE are sending unmanned spacecraft to Mars beginning this week, continuing the search for signs of ancient life on the planet. In another development following recent appearances above Italy, France, and the United States, the comet C2020F3, known as Neowise, blazed a path over Northern Ireland. NASA calls it a natural firework, and Neowise should be visible after sunset until mid-August. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.